They've meticulously constructed a labyrinth of illusion around her mind, her motives, her very essence. Today, we hand you the Socratic key. Socrates, the ancient gadfly of Athens, wasn't merely challenging abstract philosophical concepts. He was systematically unraveling human nature itself, peeling back layers of societal deceit. His methods, that relentless questioning, when applied today, expose a terrifyingly inconvenient truth about female psychology, a truth modern society, and perhaps women themselves, actively, desperately, conspire to conceal from your eyes. This isn't about blame. It's about brutal, unvarnished reality. Before you can even begin to decipher the enigma that is the female psyche, Socrates issues a foundational command: know thyself. An unexamined life, he warned, is not worth living. But how many men today truly examine their own programming, their own conditioned responses, their own carefully cultivated ignorance regarding the opposite sex? Society, the system, they have a vested interest in you not knowing yourself. A man who is a stranger to his own motivations, his own weaknesses, his own potential power, is a pliable man, a controllable man. He stumbles through life, reacting to stimuli, particularly female stimuli, with a predictability that is, frankly, advantageous to those who wish to maintain the current imbalanced dynamic. Socrates understood that genuine knowledge begins with the admission of ignorance. But today's man is often too proud or too distracted by the bread and circuses of modern life to admit he doesn't understand. He's been fed a diet of simplistic narratives, romantic comedies, and curated social media portrayals that bear little resemblance to the raw, unfiltered truths of female nature. The Socratic method demands you first dissect your illusions, your societal indoctrination. Only then can you approach the labyrinth with any hope of navigating its twists. They don't want you to know yourself, because a man who knows himself is a man who cannot be easily fooled by others, especially when it comes to the complex dance of gender dynamics. Consider the Socratic method, the elenchus, a form of cooperative, argumentative dialogue designed to stimulate critical thinking and illuminate ideas by exposing contradictions. Now, apply this relentlessly to the everyday communications you have. She says she wants a nice guy, but what does history and her own choices reveal about the type of man she consistently responds to? She says it's not about money, but Socrates would relentlessly question the observable patterns, the unspoken criteria, the societal pressures that shape her preferences, often beneath her own conscious awareness. What they don't want you to analyze is the intent and the unspoken framework behind the words. Socrates was a master at dissecting definitions. What is love in the modern context? Is it the selfless devotion promoted in fairy tales, or is it a more transactional arrangement, a complex interplay of needs, desires, and strategic positioning? What is support? Is it unwavering encouragement, or is it often conditional, tied to your utility, your status, your adherence to her unspoken script? The modern woman, like any human being, operates on multiple levels of consciousness and motivation. But the societal narrative, the one they hope you internalize without question, flattens this complexity into a caricature of easily understood, always virtuous intentions. Socrates would have none of it. He would probe, question, expose the contradictions between stated belief and actual behavior until the uncomfortable, often unpalatable, truth emerged. This is the intellectual rigor they hope you never apply, because it shatters the comforting illusions. Plato's allegory of the cave is perhaps more relevant now than it was in ancient Athens. Imagine men chained from birth, facing a wall, behind them a fire, and puppeteers casting shadows on that wall. These shadows, romantic comedies, pop songs, social media narratives, curated dating profiles, even the pronouncements of so-called experts. These form the entirety of their perceived reality of women and relationships. Who are the puppeteers in this modern cave? The media, certainly, the entertainment industry, educational systems that often prioritize ideology over objective truth. And yes, sometimes women themselves, consciously or unconsciously, perpetuate these shadows because the illusions serve a purpose. They maintain a certain order, a certain leverage. Socrates is the disruptive figure in this allegory, the one who escapes the cave, sees the sun, the harsh, unfiltered truth, and is then compelled to return to try and free the others. But what happens when he returns? He is met with ridicule, with disbelief, with anger, because the prisoners have grown comfortable in their chains, in their familiar, predictable shadows. They prefer the illusion. The truth, as Socrates discovered, can be a dangerous illumination. They profit from your comfort in the shadows, your acceptance of the curated reality. To question it, to even suggest there is an outside to the cave, is to threaten the entire structure of their perceived world, and by extension, their influence within it. Let us not forget Socrates' fate. He was condemned to death by the Athenian democracy. The charges, impiety, and, most tellingly, corrupting the youth. What was this corruption? It was teaching young men to think critically, to question authority, to challenge prevailing dogmas, to seek truth above social comfort. This knowledge, this Socratic inquiry into the unvarnished realities of female psychology, is deemed dangerous today for precisely the same reasons. It corrupts the simplistic, often infantilizing narratives fed to men. It encourages them to see beyond the performance, beyond the socially sanctioned scripts. It empowers them with a level of discernment that is deeply unsettling to a system that relies on male compliance and predictable patterns of behavior. If this information feels unsettling to you, if it triggers discomfort or even anger, that is a sign that you are beginning to break free from ingrained programming. The truth, especially a truth that has been deliberately obscured, often is painful to confront. They will label this knowledge as cynical, as misogynistic, as toxic. This is the modern equivalent of the charges leveled against Socrates. It is an attempt to silence the inquiry, to shame you back into the cave. But the Socratic man understands that such accusations are often the last resort of those whose illusions are being threatened. The oracle at Delphi, a powerful source of wisdom in the ancient world, proclaimed that no man was wiser than Socrates. His wisdom, however, lay not in claiming to have all the answers, but in his relentless pursuit of them, and his understanding of the limits of his own knowledge. He famously interpreted the oracle's pronouncement to mean that he was wisest because he knew that he knew nothing. Female psychology, in many ways, presents itself as a Delphic riddle. Consider the apparent contradictions that baffle so many men, the stated desire for sensitivity juxtaposed with an undeniable attraction to strength and dominance. The demand for emotional vulnerability often met with a loss of respect if that vulnerability is perceived as weakness. The phenomenon of hypergamy, the instinctive drive to seek a partner of higher status or resources, often denied in polite conversation, yet demonstrably evident in mate selection patterns across cultures and throughout history. These are not malicious traits. They are often deeply ingrained evolutionary strategies, but they are shrouded in layers of social conditioning and deliberate misdirection. They present a carefully curated image, a persona, but Socrates teaches you to look for the cracks in the facade, to question the surface-level pronouncements. He teaches you that the riddle is not meant to be taken at face value. The danger lies not in the riddle itself, but in misinterpreting it, in believing the simplistic answers they want you to believe. The consequences of such ignorance can range from personal heartbreak to societal imbalance. They hope you remain perplexed by the riddle, rather than seeking to understand its underlying mechanisms. Let's apply the Socratic lens to a concept they desperately try to obscure, dismiss, or rebrand: hypergamy, the innate female imperative to seek and secure the best possible genetic and provisional deal. Socrates, in his relentless pursuit of truth, would not shy away from examining this. He would ask, is it not observable that women across time and culture tend to partner with, or desire to partner with, men of equal or greater socioeconomic status, power, or genetic fitness? They will tell you it's about connection, about love, about shared values. And these things play a role, certainly, within the pool of acceptable candidates. But what defines that pool? Socrates would press further. If a woman has a choice between two men who are otherwise equal in affection and values, but one possesses significantly greater resources, status, and demonstrated capacity, which does she typically choose or feel a stronger pull towards? The answer, stripped of its romantic veneer, is often uncomfortably pragmatic. This isn't a moral judgment. It's an observation of a powerful, often unconscious, evolutionary strategy. But why is this truth so heavily guarded? Because admitting its pervasive influence shatters the illusion of unconditional love and purely romantic motivations that forms the bedrock of so much societal narrative. It exposes a fundamental aspect of female psychology that, if widely understood and navigated by men, would shift the power dynamics considerably. They don't want you to understand this, because it allows men to see the game for what it often is, and to strategize accordingly rather than operating solely on naive hope or societally implanted chivalric ideals that are rarely reciprocated in kind. To know this is not to become bitter. It is to become realistic, to understand the terrain upon which you operate. So, confronted with these stark realities, what is the Socratic path for a man? Is it to descend into cynicism, into resentment? No. Socrates championed virtue, excellence, arit. But this virtue is not meek compliance. It is a clear-sighted strength, an authenticity rooted in truth. The power that comes from this Socratic understanding of female psychology is not a power to manipulate or dominate, as those who fear this knowledge will claim. It is the power of self-preservation. It is the power of genuine choice, based not on illusion, but on an accurate assessment of reality. It is the power to navigate relationships with open eyes, to set boundaries, to understand unspoken motivations, and to build your own life on a foundation of self-respect and clarity. They want you predictable, emotionally reactive, easily led by guilt or desire. Socrates offers the path to becoming deliberate, centered, and sovereign in your own mind. This is the ultimate corruption they fear. A man who is no longer a pawn in their game, but a conscious player, in his own. A man who defines his own worth, his own path, informed by truth, however uncomfortable. This isn't about hating women. It's about loving wisdom, loving truth, and loving yourself enough to seek it. Socrates offered not comforting falsehoods, but a stark, often arduous, path to truth. The untold truth of female psychology, when viewed through his critical lens, is not an indictment, but an illumination, a profoundly necessary one for any man seeking genuine agency and understanding in the treacherous currents of the modern world. They have long counted on your willful ignorance, your fear of the uncomfortable. To turn away now, to dismiss this as too harsh or too revealing, is to choose the familiar shadows of the cave. But to question, to examine, to relentlessly pursue understanding. As Socrates implored, that is the first, most crucial act of liberation. This knowledge is not a destination, but the beginning of a more authentic journey. The path to true sight, to unshakable self-possession, is indeed perilous, and it is one you must largely walk alone. Keep seeking, keep questioning. Your clarity, your future, depends on it.